Is day 736 of the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. This week's Arukh HaShulchan Yomi is sponsored for Schus for Fuh Shlema and Rios Nefesh Vaguf for Yonas and Ezra Ben Chana Feigl. If you'd like to sponsor coming share more of the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi, it would be very greatly appreciated. It's going to be directly. Today we are doing Simon Tuflin Bays, Ches to Zion. And we're starting with the topic of Kashrin. First, you have to do Agola on the large pot when you do the Agola of the other smaller vessels. They all say, you rinse out the big pot and you do Agola in it with boiling water. And you make kosher, then you could rinse it out with cold water. And you remove release the chametz from it first. And then afterwards you can boil other second batch of boiling water which has no specific shear. But make sure that the water never rests from boiling. If they are not boiling, you can't do agola in them. No lemon showed from the then you take them, rinse them off in cold water. And then, I guess when you all finish, you fill up the big pot with soba is fasa, and you put a rim around the lip, the magila, and you do agon on it as you did the first time, the shofcha, and you spill out and you rinse it. Adani Rabbi Rosa, the tourist still speaking, Kasav Shadin Yura Gdola Kedin Shar Kelim. Shemena Bas Yoima, the din of the Yura Gdola of the large pot is like any other kelim. It's not, it has to be used 24 hours. Even if it has been used within 24 hours, but it's before the 5th hour of Erev Pesach, you don't have to do Hagolah on it first. But if it's in the 5th hour on, if it was used on that day, you have to start from scratch in Kashmir. In the first Hagolah of the pot itself, the water comes also because they don't have 60 to negate whatever the pot has absorbed. The B'kulim Sharina, we say that the volume absorbed is equivalent to the volume or the entire vessel. In other words, the volume of the wall is the entire vessel because we don't know how much it's absorbed, so we just assume that it's all absorbed. That's the case. If you use that water would become aser the kelim which you were toveling, which you were kashering in the big pot. If you leave them there until such time as they themselves stop releasing whatever they're releasing and start absorbing. Before 5th hour, even though it's going to get reabsorb, and the chush is not a problem. Shusha setero, because the time is mutter. Avadami not by not, as like not by not we explained previously. Akal Shono. V'zesh kosa be masho some mesocham. That which he wrote to writes that if you leave them in the big pot, the locain cause much the 3-day lemiflat lo bale. If you don't leave them in the big pot, then as long as they are absorbed and releasing whatever was absorbed, they don't absorb. Here's also a primary machlokas. In this case, Rabbeinu hold that chametz called a blias iser, even though it was nivla before Pesach. The Rosh Slaver, the Mikra had terrible. Rosh holds it was called mutter when it was nivla gmosh kasavna, as you will. Test. We need the femashis bar arbei. I'm going to explain many of the rabbis hold. The chametz mikra isura bala. The chametz is called isura bala. Bara rosh, besides the rosh. Im kol zer. I was saying about the Shulchan Aruch Pasuk Yavasei the B'Star B'Tamei. Nevertheless, the Shulchan Aruch Paskins like the rosh because it makes sense what he's saying. Not by not, even though previously we had not been matir things which are cooked in a chametz sticker pot just because of not by not. But the fast as far as chametz mikra yisur bala, and we went with the assumption that chametz is called yisur bala. K'mosh tab nesham siv chavtes, and shama as we wrote there. The vada linyan ochel v'pei lechol v'pesach atzon v'tam atera the not by not. In terms of eating on Pesach itself, to line the head of not by not, ain't no some because they're negative Kohen Ravasa, in the face of all those who argue in the rush. Mashkein Bagol couldn't have Pesach, but we're doing Hagolah before Pesach. The Yesh Kan Arbei Tamim, there are many tastes, between reasons. It sounds like there are many tastes. Hachiflot, I guess it goes through many tastes, goes through many mediums. Got to go through the water, to the wall, back again, and so on and so forth. Before it gets there, let's go through all the stages. Shabbos Chinas for Azul, we rely on the Sfara of there being not by not. And the Mishnah Berurah and Be'alacha write that in the same Sabach Chronim that hold that these two things, that which we require that the not b'nei Yoman, or that you kasha the big pot and have 60 to negate the kalim, which are dunking in it. It's midina. I feel it's required, even for this manis chametz, which obviously is so much greater. Shchum in the Arukh HaShulchan says we can lie not by not, but hetera bola. Well, it's not totally not by not, because totally not by not would you mean by surabala, but by heterabala. Okay. Yud Aleph. No. Yud. Sorry. Yesh is a I'm saying about the Shulchan Aruch, but Sif Aleph. Our rabbis, the authors of the Shulchan Aruch wrote in Sif Aleph. Yesh is like you have to be careful to do Agala before the 5th hour. You shouldn't have to be concerned whether the kalim have been used the last 24 hours or love or not. So you don't have to be concerned. There's 60 in the water, negative keli, relative to the vessel. Shema magil, in which you're dunking in lav. The kalim magil kalim shebayosam muetas and kalim shebayosam ruba. Also, we don't want to be concerned that maybe we're going to cash together kalim where there was very little absorption with those which are a lot of absorption. The bracket says here, because after the time it's prohibited, doing kashing then, you have to be cautious that maybe the kli, which has a very little absorption, after it releases me'akli, it's going to absorb from the other keli sheblasa meruba, which absorbed a lot. But shoel lehaflit is going to take and only gets released on kind of like a time delay, since there's so much absorbed. Out of the brackets, we're going to go back and forth through brackets and not brackets to the end of this sif, so I'm not going to specify. So if you leave the stuff in the pot, put kasha pot too long, where it's concerned that after it releases what's inside, it's going to go and absorb it again. But he doesn't leave there so long. Because afraid to leave him so long, he's not going to leave him there with anything whatsoever except for the bare minimum. Also, doesn't want to have to be careful that the water doesn't desist from boiling. Because as long as they're boiling, that's good. They only release. They don't cause absorption. Only after all the stuff inside is released, then it starts being mavli again. You shouldn't put the pot you're kashing into the pot in which you're kashing until the water starts boiling. And also that you don't have to do agola on the large pot, in which you agola near the beginning nor at the end. Shalok that's the goinim, not like doing shavenu, that you do have to do hagola again. You going to go down is oh well you have to do you have to kashu that's the beginning at the end. That's the rush to die between obasov. Kashu either beginning at the end and not both. Yeah, for that, you know that zem shekasvu shaloinu chamayim yishchasan. That what she said. The water should not rest from its boiling. Kas Rabbeinu Ramah b'zel shon Ramah writes that Rabbeinu Kol Committee argues really the enagom has klum meinamayim roslim. It's not just that you shouldn't let it. If the water's not boiling, it's not effective. Al kain yeshu so I feel kodesh man isuro. They be careful even before the time it's prohibited. Shlo yanuchu mirti chasan. And they should not cease boiling. Calls much magil as long as he is kashre. Hakal l'shono. End quote. Beno van Klau. It's not understandable at all. Who argues in this? They got married. They were showing some share go b'shas b'sicha. This opinion also is that you only do agol when it's boiling over. But Iraq the Karmi the Kohen's on Yisur Yuchul Amayim Lenuach Mat Mirsi Chasan LeSarkel. One of the things that if it, at the end the water quiets down a bit, it's not going to repeat the vessels. Hashem Lachas Maisur, but it's cools down after the time of Isur. Shianuchu when they rest. Yivlu Amaplatos Asuros. They will all absorb from the prohibited substance releases. Abshita Shagola Eina Lebishas Shasasicha. In any event, even nobody argues, certainly good, that Hagola is only at the time that it's boiling. The Shmuel says you have to warn the people doing Hagola, because they have several kulos, which they do without a consulting, and they cause mistakes because it's so quick to do the stuff, and I'm to see if they actually, the pot was boiling at the time. Mishra says we in them because we only normally do agola on plates and spoons, which you normally use by irui. In which case hagola works by water, which the gods will let us by him. But in a copper pot and things where you would use through a kli rishon, even b'diavad this hagola doesn't work. You have to go back and do it again. He says in the bracket, okay, but in terms of answering the food, if you use it on Pesach, the Pinagam is not sure. If it's not Ben Yomo, then you can rely on it to eat the food. Back to Rosh Hashanah. Farshim. Farshim ask why does the water have to be constantly boiling? The difference is that according to the first opinion, you can even do kasha when the water is not boiling. Ayin Sham would want to do him him, and that taka is a davar tamur. What exactly does he mean by that? Your base. Sorry, you're off. Vidat. No, we did do that. So I took a break. I was falling asleep. Came back. So let's go on. Your base. Yearly Shapik Kamar. The never go to Shemini B'Zeh. The Levush is saying good. It's saying good. Saying a big thing. The Neikah Kvarashon is bar already came clarified. She should some same as man. She had to actually with the Hamayim. You have to minimize the amount of time that the vessel is in the water. Los Mamar Karega, not a moment. Mishum the Ain says man plate doesn't give enough time to release the taste from the walls. Los Mambaruba, not too much. The Imkain because they're boleh, because then it absorbs again. Even though if we do Hagola before the 5th hour, we don't care if it gets reabsorbed. Especially the vessels that are not b'nei yomam, because it's a tam kolush, as we spoke about. Nevertheless, why do we deliberately do that? Sof have tibala sham chametz. Now, since it is chametz, one minute amount, but little chametz, it's not appropriate to do that. But who can tell exactly how much time it should be? Al pi rov munachim biura yosem shishir, and normally the things we kashim in the pot longer than the shir. Kozman shayuro tachas, but as long as the pot is boiling, maler sichus, and it's bubbling. Enchashash, but that's not a concern. The Azrak poletas will balas, because then it only releases and doesn't absorb. Mashrinking shenacham is as opposed to when it rests from boiling, then it can start absorbing again. Zeu shomer al hadea kudemis. So he says in the previous opinion, shekoda zani sur ensur daknik. Was that before the time it's prohibited? You don't have to be concerned about this. If the water happens to subside from its boiling point, and so you say some people argue. Then Hagol Malel Klum Imeina Mayim Otchim and say that the Hagol is not effective if the water is not boiling. Klamar the Havi Kilo Higil, it's meaning it's as if he didn't do Hagola. Came and Shilchozer Boler, since it reabsorbs. Vav Shadain Heter, even though it's still Heter because it's before this man is. So come, it's tell us Yesh Hagola, Shilchozer Boler, what good does it do with Hagola if you gets reabsorbed? Although it does do good, obviously, because it's a tam kolush, it's the weakened taste. So, therefore, it's appropriate to make sure that during kashering, the pot should not desist from boiling. So here was then that's the appropriate way to conduct oneself and be careful about it. You give a loyal kodemas ma'aser. If you didn't do hagola before the time becomes prohibited, yochal hagil at Pesach. You do hagola still up till Pesach starts. Pesach is hagil, but on Pesach itself you cannot do hagola. Since then, chametz is also in a mashu, and hagola is not effective. It can't be that nothing will get reabsorbed. Mutzal labin klito Pesach. You can do libun, however, as kol belu avena chozer mavliya. The fire removes everything which is absorbed and does not go. The things will get reabsorbed after they get burned up. Pashnu zel b'chol hamoed. Obviously, it's in b'chol hamoed. The beyond of also mitzvah melacha. You have to be can't do it because it's a melacha. Mosab siman tov kuf tes. V'day you should know. If you do Hagol on Erev Pesach, after time becomes also certainly zar b'kol hadvarim shein certainly zar b'mikodem. You have to be very careful about things which before this man is, so you don't have to be careful about. It shouldn't have been used in the past 24 hours. And if they were used in the past 24 hours, so she should connect them. That has to be 60, corresponding to the entire volume of the pot. Doesn't mean it's about to play the mind, because then the whatever is released gets nullified in the water. You might ask, what do you mean? How can I'm not allowed to deliberately go and nullify prohibitions. But it's not actually doing bittul here. Bittul is just a side effect. Your main intent is to do hagola. If it's not within 24 hours, mutar gam b'leikoshishim, it's permitted even if there isn't 60. After those in time of gam osachatchila, even those we also chatchila, those in time with gam, hacha b'valua v'yavshavin acher. Here where it's absorbed, and it's not possible to do anything else, except with great difficulty. I guess great difficulty means not sure exactly what it means. I guess libun. Mutar is permissible. Wanted to mention that I was once in a Pesach hotel many years ago, and the local mashgiach did not know this halacha, and he didn't have enough trays to use for serving on Yotif, and he went and he did hagola on trays from the treif side of the hotel. And I was not the Rav Machshir, but I pointed out to him that it was also. And sometimes even the mashgichim don't know these halachas. You have to be careful. I don't know how you can be careful. You should be aware that this is. But people don't necessarily realize that they can't do hagolah on Pesach. They should be aware of it. The Shmuel says so many Achroim wrote that which Ramah said you have to be careful with everything on Erev Pesach after the Zman Yisr. It's not specific. Because a strict letter of the law, from 4 hours into the day until the night, it's okay to have one of two things. Either that it should be that either that neither of them, neither the kli you are being machshir, nor the big pot in which you're putting it should be b'nei yoman, and or if the kli is ben yomo, then there has to be 60 corresponding to the keli in order to nullify it. If the big pot in which you're conjuring is ben yomo, you can't do agol on it unless first you machshir it, and beforehand. The Achronim wrote that from the 4th hour until the 6th hour, you need only one of these two things. But from the 6th hour until the night, you should be careful to be careful about all of these things, the ones which are mentioned here in the halacha. Yudalit. Yesh davar acher is another thing. Sheish so you have to be careful. Chayz mani so after the time prohibited. Shalagil kli miktsas. Not to do part of the vessel, which is before it. Sheloi malech miktsas me'aniga leikan is opam koshu b'yura reichos abeleh. Because it's not possible to prevent some part of the keli which has already been dunked to be dunked again, and this time it's not going to be a release; it's going to absorb. You have to put the whole thing in at once. Nevertheless, if it's a very difficult circumstances, we don't ask for all the things you mentioned. Came in the ikar because the main issue is that they might go back and be reabsorbed. Those hold that even by food, something which is released doesn't get reabsorbed. Because is only by things absorbed into a vessel. First, you should be machshir kelim, which absorb very little. Then afterwards, the ones which absorb a lot. Don't leave them in the big pot too long. Don't let the water rest from boiling. These you should do a go on the big pot, beginning and end. So is consolidating all that we learned. Ben yomo, if the pot is the large pot is not ben yomo, you don't have to do hagola at the beginning or end. But the minute is to be machmir with all these chumas, even if it's 4 or 5 hours, and not like the Mishnah Berurah that we just read at length. Sharon Simon says that there's no, but here's obviously the levels, because here it says that even if the pot has not been yomo, there's a minute to do hagola, the large pot, which you're doing the kashering. The minute is to do hagola on it, even if it's not been yomo. Continuing in the Arukh HaShulchan, those who ask, what good is there doing hagola on the large pot? I'm just not going to call it a drum. I should have thought about that earlier, because that's what it is in my mind, a large drum in which you put another kelim. Pesach. So now it's not talking about the drum here. That's my mistake. He said here's about what good does Hagolah do altogether? Theoretical perspective. It's all going to get reabsorbed from the water in which you're doing the kashering. The Achshir Pesach is going to get reawakened on Pesach. We explained this several times that which is an absorbed substance, we don't say it reawakens. It says the brackets here, Sham, Umashik, Shah, Malam, Manakat, Achar Shesha, and Yaakov. I don't think it's important for us to get into that. If you kasher a small vessel, like a knife, shall isser, in a pot in which there's 60 corresponding to knife, you can even do hagola in a kosher pot. Because it's not going to answer. Also, the water is kosher. It's not going to battle isser. As we said, the kamosu lagil v'otiesu, because the intent is to go and remove this. Because ben yomo, so if it's not ben yomo, the knife aim is shum chashash. There's no issue whatsoever. This isn't 60. You can also theoretically be poking in the water. In other words, make the water unpalatable, and then there's no seitam. But I show the anunogim lagil can pesa merchatz l'tzibu sheishim biruk dolam ba'or v'eish chazak. Our custom is to do Hagin Gavaldik, is to do Hagolas Kalim before Pesach in a public bathhouse where there are big drums a very powerful fire. Each Ben Torah goes, I see where it's appropriate to designate a Ben Torah to be in charge of the communal conscience. They should be meticulous, that the Haggalah should be absolutely proper. In brackets it says here, if you test the Ben Yomo English Tamashamayim. If there's a Ben Yomo issue, then you should not use the water after using for kashrei. Tesnai yeshi some like you clay basar or clay kola biyachad. Don't do agola on meat and milk came together and can't echamim eno ben yomo. Unless one of them is not ben yomo. The loke reiv lose them because otherwise they'll absorb from each other and it will be problematic. The Shabura says that even if they're both bnei yomon, but there's 60 corresponding to one of them, then it's whatever it releases is batel. It's as if it doesn't exist. Also, in the other days of the year, of course, because it's a basal chol. But Erev Pesach before the and Erev Pesach before the 5th hour. But afterwards, then you have to be careful that everything should not be ben yomo, or that there should be shishim corresponding to the kalim, both kalim. Over the Eved, back to Arukh HaShulchan, the Eved having not by not kamvur yor desim etzadik hey. If you the Eved, you did cut the kosher milk and meat kalim at the same time, so it's not by not, it doesn't answer. The Mishnah says, according to Ramah, even you're there, even by the Eved, it's also. But I guess Arukh HaShulchan did not hold that way because he doesn't say that. And according to Ramah, it was also the Eved, he wouldn't say this. Okay, back to Arukh HaShulchan. Koshken kli iser ein lios b'nei yomon. So if you're kashering things which are isurim, not just basar or cholav, they should not have been used in the past 24 hours. Zelo shayach not by not, which is on the shom. But that there's no not by not. Perhaps this is what the Mishnah is referring to by iser. There's no not by not because it's us already. It's supposed to basar cholav where they have to combine to make an iser. And the general custom in Am Yisrael is that we don't do Haggalah on any vessel, even if it's one vessel by itself, unless it's already not been used for 24 hours. Also, tables and benches in room in it sounds like it's in some sort of communal dining area. So it's could be it's private house too. Where you have to pour boiling hot water, as we explained previously. Widespread minhag is first it's called very well. The show makes lace and you wait 24 hours. Judge says doesn't need 24 hours in last use. The last time you use chametz on them. And then you pour the hot water on them. Mr. says they should be first very dry from the cold water used to scrub because otherwise cold water is going to cool off the hot water. Yishmoch b'zrizus, you should pour it carefully. Yishmoch me'aktera, it's means quickly, I should say. Shalom me'aktera should be shown and take specifically the pot in which it's cooked, in which the water was boiled. Don't put it into another pot. If you do pour it into another the water from the stove onto another pot, which you're going to use, you have to put in the hot stones. You're bringing it up back to boiling level. Notice the clear talk should be show. If you put a vessel into the pot where you cooked, like let's say you put a large ladle into the pot which you boiled up the water for the kashrei. The show also show them, and you leave it there for a moment, a few moments. I don't know. Let me show him mine, and you take it from there. They take it from there with the water. Nechsheves kli rishon. This is like a kli rishon. Yishkasu lagil shlosh yom kon Pesach. Those who say that you should go 3 days before Pesach. Vein amina came with Dr. Bezeh. We are not meticulous about doing that.